Is GM lying or just playing by the rules? Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk. We're reading through a lot of courthouse documents this morning, legalese. So bear with me. I'm going to get this information out to you the best way I understand it. We'll kind of go over things. And I'm really curious you guys' opinion on this because, well, I found it pretty fascinating. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you guys. And we'll talk more about this. Oh, I got to scroll up for a second. This story was found by managing editor Jill Simonello. Sent it to me yesterday, and I've been kind of digging through it this morning. So truck owners argue to reinstate claims against GM for lying about clean diesel engines. A class of consumers says deceptive marketing duped them into buying Duramax diesel trucks, which emitted higher amounts of pollutants than their gas-burning counterparts. So let's kind of dive into this. So basically what it is the class action lawsuit about GM and Robert Bosch against those two for making some online defeat devices. Remember, like Volkswagen did this and they got caught to fudge emission numbers for its Duramax clean diesel truck engines. So these defeat devices were used to pass emissions tests and not really do that well in real world testing. We'll see more about this in a little bit. So the idea is, according to the plaintiffs, GM used deceptive marketing to tout the engine's whopping reduction in carbon emissions, despite knowing that once the defeat devices were disabled in real world driving scenarios, the pollution numbers would exceed federal limits. Consumers were duped to paying more for the truck for the sham of clean diesel technology. Now, a federal judge dismissed all these claims against GM in 2023 or July 2023 and ruled the suit was preempted by the Clean Air Act. We'll get more to that in a little bit. Again, I read through a lot of stuff. Let me slow down. Let's talk about this complaint though. It's from Hags Bergman. They're a pretty large pretty large firm in Seattle. They do a lot of class action lawsuits. I find their stuff pretty interesting. It's interesting to me to report on it. So according to the firm's lawsuit, much like Volkswagen, Fiat Chrysler, Mercedes, General Motors has allegedly intentionally sold Silverado Duramax diesel 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks with emissions cheating devices that mask the vehicle's release of illegally high levels of NOx. The alleged use of defeat devices means consumers overpaid for these trucks, duped them buying them. They wouldn't have bought these trucks otherwise, is what the complaint is saying. It does affect the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra. I'm going to see if I can't zoom into this infographic. I pull it up. It's really small. So they're saying there's 3 defeat devices. It's really what it is. It's software. Their expert found a terminology called online dosing. We'll get more into this. So they want this lawsuit reinstated. They say GM lied. They said fuel efficient, the best of any full-size truck, which I find is interesting because 3/4 1 ton trucks don't have EPA fuel economy numbers. Low emissions, high fuel economy, and powerful torque and towing capacity. Duramax diesel engines turned heavy-duty diesel fuel into a fine mist, delivers low emissions, whopping reduction. Engineers have accomplished remarkable reduction of fleet of diesel emissions. There's lots of information going on there. Okay, let's dive into this. So this is what the lawsuit is basically pertaining to. This is the brief that was sent in to argue they should reopen the claim. And what I found in this was basically this expert was brought in to drive the trucks and various terrain, Justin Smithers. I don't know why I'm saying Smithers. He's a great guy. I'm sorry, Justin Smithers, if I could say Smithers this morning. He explains he was asked to evaluate them. So he took these trucks out. He drove them on different terrain, different city, highway, towing, grades, non-grades, and he put emissions capturing equipment on the truck and measured the emissions output. What he found was that the vehicles at issue emit NOx in excess of regulatory standards and circumstances the vehicles commonly encounter in real-world driving. He explained the results are also well above the vehicle's performance during regulatory testing. That's because GM and Bosch developed and programmed the device to hide real effects of online dosing during testing and increase its use and the consequent increase in NOx emissions where the trucks were operating outside of test cycle boundaries. So basically, he explained the diesel truck uses a catalyst technology called the selective catalytic reduction, SCR, designed to reduce emissions of NOx from the engine by more than 90% in most real-world driving scenarios. The SCR system in the Duramax trucks neutralizes NOx emitted by the emission combustion chamber by using a solution called DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, which reacts with the catalyst in the SCR to reduce NOx. When online dosing is used for extended periods of real-world driving, the catalyst is depleted, resulting in increased NOx emissions. So I didn't know what online dosing was, and I was able to find this document that was from a German company analyzing Mercedes-Benz diesel engines, and it talks about what's going on here. So DEF is basically ammonia. So you have the selective catalytic reduction, right, system. So you add ammonia to this, it interacts with the combustion coming in the engine, it neutralizes the NOx going out. So what typically happens is you would take the SCR, you would put enough ammonia in it to at a certain point, so you keep filling it up, and that way it reduces the amount of NOx coming out. So extra ammonia left over, it then remains an SCR catalyst, so you're going to fill this thing up. But what he's saying is there's another way to look at this too. This is where the online dosing comes in, and this is going to be right here. The alternative model is to only feed the truck an amount of DEF fluid it needs to keep it below an excessive limit in this. So as described above, so if you're gonna put ammonia into the SCR, you're gonna keep it at a consistent level, keep filling it up. You can get around this by saying that if you have too much ammonia in there, if you overload it or underdose it, you do have some problems. To remedy this, Bosch and other ECO manufacturers implemented an alternative control strategy, which is vastly simplified. This alternate control strategy is often called alternate model or online dosing, pre-control, feed forward. In this mode, no attempt is made to keep the SCR catalyst at high ammonia levels. So you don't keep it filled. Instead, you add blue, which is their terminology for the DEF, is dosed at an amount that is needed to reduce the current load of NOx only. The calculation for the amount of dosed AdBlue is done based on the estimated NOx load reduced to expected efficiency. The expected efficiency is a computerized program as far as mathematical to understand how much DEF you actually need to put in there to get an efficient level of enough DEF plus reducing NOx. So back to our lawsuit, what Smithers is saying is that when he did this truck in real world driving, and some of this redacted because of it's under seal. I'm going down. He said that the success of the online dosing comes at a cost of increased NOx emissions during real world driving, not during testing. Okay, the results show the average city driving emissions of 4 Duramax 2500 test trucks was about 3.2 times the federal standard during real world driving. So they use online dosing to not keep the SCR full of ammonia, but to only add enough to make it really efficient. So you have better torque, better horsepower, better power. But that also increases the amount of federal standard during real world driving in certain scenarios, right? So as Smithers identified numerous specific times when online dosing in Duramax trucks caused excessive NOx emissions during real world driving was not revealed during testing under EPA standards. So he's saying at average or cumulative road grades above 2%, NOx emissions were 1,137 milligrams per mile. That's 2.8 times the standard of 400 milligrams per mile. You also have compared to emissions when not towing, the test vehicles are 23 to 45 times higher when towing on road grades greater than 2%. Okay. And then cold start. So in cold start scenarios, the trucks emit 2.8 times higher emissions than they would in normal driving scenarios. Okay. So what does this all mean? It means that GM has developed, or Bosch has developed, a computerized system that reduces the amount of DEF fluid that goes in the SCR depending on the conditions. Now, the lawsuit was tossed out because the Clean Air Act gives the EPA the right to set standards for emissions, and they work with manufacturers. Since the consumers are not directly buying from General Motors, but instead they're buying from a dealership, they're not directly in contact with the manufacturer, they cannot get involved in this process. The lawsuits are saying, look, if you're not directly impacted by this, so you can't sue. What they did say was that the people suing should be the dealerships. Dealerships should be suing GM for falsifying these claims and go that route. But as lawyers have pointed out in some of the briefs I read, why would the dealership have any interest in suing General Motors in this case for not meeting the regulations. And then the other part of this whole equation is, did GM really cheat to develop these online cheating devices like online dosing when the EPA sets the test requirements and General Motors basically builds vehicles to those test requirements? So see where this gets complex? Like, who's really at fault? Does it really matter? And what's going on? What's going to happen with this? And so the lawsuit's being amended, and they're asking to have the appellate court look at it again by saying, look, consumers have to have a way to sue the manufacturer. We can't just have the dealership sue the manufacturer. That's just ridiculous, because dealerships never sued the manufacturer. And then you have companies like GM and Bosch who are saying, why do we get sued? We're just following the test protocols put out by the EPA. If the EPA's got a problem with it, they should change their testing protocols and then come back on us, which is what happened with Volkswagen. Volkswagen lawsuit was mandated by the EPA. EPA went and sued to the Department of Justice, sued Volkswagen. Well, I hope I got most of that right. I hope that's about clear as mud. That's about what I got from this. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts below? Did GM really cheat, or did they just follow testing protocols, or should more real-world testing actually be impactful or part of EPA testing? Chin rub. All right, for more, check videos over here. Website down below as well, pickuptrucktalk.com. As always, thanks for watching. I will see you down the road.